I am Trina Cody. I am the Manager of Strategic Market Analysis at Wiley. I'm going to talk about a study that we did last fall looking at members of societies and associations, specifically around the younger members, the younger generations. So let's see. Just a little background. Wiley has 1,200 publishing partners. 80% of these are associations or societies, and they represent more than 7 million members worldwide. So we wanted to know what these members value from their societies, specifically the younger generations. Going in, we knew that by this year, Generation Y, or Millennials, interchangeable, will be the majority of the workforce, the majority vote, and the largest consumer base, purchasing power of over $1 trillion. We also know that there's more than 80 million of them in the US, which makes them bigger than the baby boomer generation. We know that they're narcissistic, impatient, coddled, tech-savvy, hyper-connected, values-driven. 81% of millennials will consider the values of the brand before they purchase from that company. They're self-expressive, take selfies all the time. They're debt-ridden, over $1 trillion in student debt. On average, a millennial graduating from undergrad will have $17,000 in student debt. That's up from $10,000 in 1998. They're collaborative, they're diverse, they're disengaged, and they're highly educated. Majority, 2/3 have a college undergrad degree, and 81% of those are looking to get a graduate degree. We also know that they've lived through many different things throughout their lives. Recessions, really tragic events, impeachment of their presidents, 9/11, scandals in big companies, war, launches of social media platforms, launches of new technology, more recession. So what does this mean? What do they really want? What are they looking for? We know all these things about them, but what do they want from their societies and associations? And here comes the membership survey that we talked about. The goal of the survey was to help our society partners develop their strategies around information and education products and services. So as we partner with quite a few societies and associations, we want to help them really develop their strategy around membership acquisition. So the methodology was an online research survey last fall. We sent it to over 1.2 million contacts that we had in our database. The audience was research-based professionals, so researchers and those that work in industry that use research on a daily basis. We didn't put any restrictions based on geography, demographics, behaviors. It was really open to anyone. So a couple limitations before we get into the results. Because this was sent to researchers and research-based professionals, the responses are really skewed towards a scholarly audience. So we can't say that they apply to association trade members. Also, this is really a snapshot in time, so we're not talking about trends or changes in the market. This is really just looking right now. So what were the results? We had close to 14,000 completed surveys. The respondents are highly educated. 31% have a doctorate's degree. 30% have a master's degree. They came from 173 countries around the world. They covered 75 research disciplines, so engineering, humanities, law, psychology, really across all disciplines. 39% work in a college or university. 17% work in a hospital or healthcare setting. 6% work in corporate. Majority had at least 10 years work experience, so they're pretty developed and established in their career, and they cross 4 generations. So as we define them, the 4 generations are the silent generation, and those are people that were born before 1945. They represent 3% of our respondents. We have the baby boomers born between 1945 and 1965. They represented 31% of our respondents. Generation X was our biggest generation represented. They're born between 1965 and 1980 with 35%. and millennials, or Generation Y, depending what term you like to use, born between 1980 and 2000, and that was 31% of our respondents. Because we're interested in the younger generations, the younger members, we're really going to focus on millennials and how they differ from the older generations. So, can anyone guess the percentage of millennials that have not joined a membership organization? Just call it out. Oh, God. All right, well, my stat's not going to be that great then, because it's 43%. We're supposed to say like 20%, and then this would have been shocking. But 20%. But what is interesting is when you compare it to the older generations. So over 80% of the silent generation and baby boomers are members. They're current members of the societies. And when you compare that to the millennials, that's 48%. That's a big drop. And when we consider that millennials, you could say that some of them are 15 years old right now, but a lot of them are in their 30s. So they have 10 years work experience. They should be considering membership. What's also interesting is 8% of millennials are unsure if they're members, which is much higher than the other generations. And what that says to me is even if they are paying for membership, they're not using the benefits and they're not engaged. So really, they're probably not considered members. Millennials join for the same reasons as the older generations. What we found is the top 5 reasons why people originally joined their organization. Number 1, quality of research-based content. Notice this doesn't say access to, it just says research-based content, which I think, and we have to look into this a bit more, but could lead towards more the prestige of the organization being associated with that research-based content. Networking opportunities came in number 4, which we usually think as the number 1 reason why people join societies and associations. And then number 5, value of membership benefits to me. So this isn't about the number or the cost. It's really about the value that the individual sees. But if you compare this across generations, the strength of those reasons are weakening. So I know this font is really small and it's hard to see, but the overall picture, the blue line represents millennials. And if you're asking about the top ranked, you want the lowest number is the main reason. So the blue line represents millennials, and you can see that goes above the other generations there. So although it's the same pattern, it is weakening. Millennials renew for the same reason that other generations, because they feel connected to the community. But they do not join because they've never been invited. Typically, we think of millennials as being cost sensitive. They don't have money. And really what we see here is 26% of the Generation X, so the next older generation, said that the cost is too high and that's why they're not joining. However, 21% of the millennials said they have never been invited and that's why they're not joining. And that follows with, I don't know what's available in my field and it's never occurred to me. Something to consider. So I think this leads to the recruitment of new members. Just doing an email blast saying, hey, we're here, is not really going to attract the younger members or potential members. Millennials actively read their organization's publications, just like every other generation, but less so than the older generations. So once again, the blue line represents millennials. 80% of the silent generation and baby boomers say that they actively read the organization's publications. That's compared to 65% of millennials. Millennials are really less active across the board, except for 31% said that they participate in the association's public social media networks, and that's higher than the other generations. What I think was interesting is only 30% of millennials have voted in the association's elections. That's compared to over 50% for silent generation and baby boomers. And then lastly, 25% of millennials have participated in the Young Professionals program, which is higher than the other generations, which isn't surprising. But when you think about that, that's only 1/4 of millennial members have participated. Members from all generations value the peer review journal. So 33% of baby boomers said that the number 1 most valued benefit that they get from their society is the peer review journal. 30% of Generation X and 25% of millennials. When it becomes interesting is when you compare members and non-members. So if you look at non-member millennials, they value the peer review journal at 16%. So 16% said that that's the most valued benefit, compared to 25% of current members. And that really switches with 38% of non-member millennials value continuing education. What also differs is compared to the older generations value in-person events, so conferences, and standards and guidelines to help them do their job better. Where that switches for millennials, they're really looking for expert advice from seasoned professionals and opportunities for leadership experience. Millennials want more engagement. So when we ask them to describe their level of engagement with their organization, 38% of millennials said it's too little or far too little. That's compared to the 23% of silent generation. Here the question becomes, what is the definition of engagement? Are generations giving a different definition? Millennials touch their smartphone 43 times throughout the day on average. When they do that, they're looking for something. They're looking for engagement with a brand or an organization. And lastly, satisfaction is high across the board, but it does start to decrease as the generation gets younger. So close to 80% of the silent generation and baby boomers are satisfied with their organization and their experience with that organization. And that's compared to 66% of millennials. Here, the dissatisfaction, so the percentage that are dissatisfied, doesn't really change across the generations. It's those that are neutral. So more millennials are neutral with their experience, which goes back to the engagement. Are they not engaged? And when you think about word of mouth is really a big promotion vehicle that associations use to attract new members. If a majority or a good portion of your members are neutral, they're not going to be out there talking about your organization as an ambassador. So this is just a summary of what I said. 43% of millennials have not joined membership organizations. Millennials don't join because they've never been invited. Members from all generations value the peer review journal, but non-member millennials value continuing education more. And the younger generations do want more engagement, and satisfaction is high, but it does start to decline. That's it. Thank you.